Okay, so we've learned how to move stuff around our screen. We've learned how to add, um, like shape layers and other interesting things that you could add to your comp here to make it look good. And then we've also learned how to add other footage. So we've dragged other footage in here and transformed it and changed it. But one thing that you might want to do is like think, well, it'd be kind of cool if I could slow some footage down, like make it less fast. Or if I wanted to make it faster, how would I do slow motion or move things around more quickly? So there's a couple different ways you can do that. Probably the easiest way for us at this point, since we're so new to this, is just to, again, control-click on the thing you want to change the timing of. So you want to make it faster or slower. And again, it brings up all these options for us, and we're just going to go to time. And in this case, we're going to go to time stretch. And instead of stretch factor of 100, we're going to go stretch factor of 300. So it changed the duration of that thing from being like 1 second or half a second to being, 2 seconds and 15, frames. So now, if I just push play on this thing, it's going to be a real slow flapping of the bird, right? So, so that could be cool, and I could play around with stuff like that if I wanted to, had something that made sense for me to do that. One thing I like to do when I do something along those lines is maybe I'm going to want to transform it. So I'm going to want to change, I'm just going to fade it in slowly. So what I do is I go right to the beginning of the chunk of footage, push the opacity keyframe, and crank that back to 0, right? And then when we get into it a little ways, I'll crank it up to, let's say we'll just go up to like 40% just to keep it subtle. We're going to keep moving along here until we get to close to the end. We're going to kick in another keyframe, so you just push this button here that gives you a new keyframe. So that holds this whole section of the timeline down here. That holds this whole section at 40% that whole time. And then it's going to drop back down to 0 when I get to the edge of my footage. So it kind of fades a thing in and out. So now instead of this like hard like start and stop, it's got this really subtle kind of ramping up and then ramping down. There's other ways to control time and to control opacity and stuff, but this is like the easiest way that I know of to do it. So that kind of thing can be really exciting and interesting, and you can play with it. But the other thing you might want to try doing, in addition to messing with time, is to change a color of something. So we just made these drawings, our animated pieces, black, right? We just made them with black lines just to make them simple to see. But the great thing is you can change that stuff. And that's with effects. So kind of like filters in Photoshop, you can do effects in AfterEffects. And it does a lot of them are exactly the same. So if I select my item here, like my untitled piece of footage that's just faded back here, a really big bird there, and I go to effects, I can see there's a whole bunch of effects that are available to me. And these things go on and on, man. This is a rabbit hole that you can really get stuck in, so don't get too crazy with it. But if you go to color correction, which is where you would do things like adjust brightness and contrast, or levels. If you have some footage that's a little bit too gray and you want to kind of punch it up the contrast, you can mess with that stuff here. But what we're going to do is we're going to go to tint. And tint's this great sort of tool that allows you to change something that's black and turn it into something else. So if I want to click on this, says map black to, I can just click on that and let's change it to let's change that to, we'll go up here, make that like a green color, right? So that just means that everything that was black has now been changed into that green color. So I of course can do the exact same thing with my white if I want to, but if it's going to look like pretty awful. Although who knows? Maybe you can make something happen along those lines. But it just basically changes your colors. Whatever was white becomes whatever else you tell it. Whatever was black becomes the other thing. And you can keyframe most things. If you look here, you see you can keyframe them. Although be careful not to get too crazy. So I like that because if I want to, I can now go up into this. I can select this bird. I can go to Effect, Color Correction. I can go to Tint, and I can change that bird into like a fiery red bird of death. So now that bird's just going to fly. That red bird's going to fly around wherever I tell it to. Same bird, I just changed the color on it, right? So it's kind of fun. You can do all kinds of like really interesting sort of things by adding different layers, changing colors. All those effects are available to you to do all kinds of different things as you see fit. So your job now is just to make your project awesome by adding interesting things that can happen as you go.